Josh.
And then you. Two quick points. John Lloyd at the FT, to speak to something that Jeremy Bowen said. And that is that what he makes clear is that we in the media have phases, especially from those who report wars. And the phase, and David has mentioned it as well, and others, the phase in the 90s, those who were reporting from Bosnia, before something must be done. The phase now is we need to get out. And in both cases, they come from the need of correspondents to watch horrors. And when you watch horrors, of course, almost anybody will say, what's the answer? I think it's partly because most of us are British that we think that something can be done. When I was reporting from Russia, I used to go to the English box with a more intrepid reporter, a friend who was a Czech. And when we would talk afterwards, or talk about other reporters afterwards, it was notable that the Americans, the Brits, the French, the larger countries spoke in terms of, we must do something. My Czech friend never said that, because he knew the Czechs wouldn't do anything. The Czechs were morally inferior because they didn't have the force. We thought something must be done because we thought an army or a foreign office could come in. That's just a mindset. So something must be done, or we must get out. It's a mindset of people who assume that their nation can do it or can stop doing it. And it isn't at all what people in the in situ think, and it isn't what journalists in small nations think. The second point speaks to something Michela said, and actually Anatole just said, which that I take Michela's point about NGOs. But one of the important things about NGOs is that they are, in a sense, becoming journalism. A number of people that I know have left journalism because they're dissatisfied with exactly what many have testified to, that you can't get it in for the reasons that Anatole gives. But you can if you join, say, Human Rights Watch or Amnesty or another. You can get across a vast amount of material into a report, which a bit of which must be picked up. Hence the reason, as Michela said, why NGOs shelter and talk to and become friendly with journalists, because they want to get their particular out. I'm less than years about that. I think people like Human Rights Watch are worth being there, are good things. But it's there where a lot of journalism is done. It's now, and all of you, I think, every one of you on the platform has written a book or books. That's where the detailed journalism is done, or it's done on blogs, on the internet, or it's done at times in long-form journalism. It is never going to be the case. It is the case less than before. David said, the record, the Daily Mirror used to have a correspondent in Nairobi. It is never again going to be the case that we are going to get complex situations deployed in mass media. Television, or I take the point that the BBC does better than most, or in newspapers, even upmarket newspapers, is never going to be the case. It's going to be in small circulation, books, long-form journalism, magazines, usually on the internet, and blogs.
I'm going to take one more to me. I'll ask you to read that.
Esther Webber, Channel 4. I was just wondering, quick question to everyone here. Really, what success in journalism would look like? Whether the most important is, as Jeremy Bowen said, visibility.
Could you now,
Oh boy.
round up on all of that?
I've got four. Do you want me to start?
Yes. Yes.
I got four brief points to make, but I'm going to pick up that last one. I mean, Jeremy's point about shining the light is, for me at any rate, in my experience, exceedingly important. And I just give to two very brief stories. I remember that wonderful man Ed Williami and who was it?
ITN.
No, Guardian journalist. What was her name?
Maggie.
Maggie O'Kane, wonderful Maggie O'Kane. We went off to Banja Luka, and we heard about Karatem and Mashka. They'd been exposed by Ed Williami, and we managed to persuade the Serbs to let us into Maniacha. They said they'd shoot us because there was a curfew, and I said to them, well, we'd have to shoot in front of the television cameras, and Ed and Maggie O'Kane and co, and they let us in. And I actually spoke during the Milosevic trial to some people afterwards who had been in there, and in the evidence they had given, they said one day a guy came along, no, a guy, not a British MP, one day a guy came along and bought some television cameras. Before that we were being killed, after that we never were. I have no doubt whatsoever that's the best day's work I've ever done in my life. And it was the television cameras and the reporters that made the difference, that saved the lives. The second was with David here, when he and I went in Kosovo, in Suvareka, and we had seen the Serb villages, the Kosovo villages being bombarded by main battle units of the Serb army. And we went in the following day with that wonderful woman from the UNHCR. And he took the film when he went in, and we were eventually arrested by the Serbs and escorted out to Suriname. When I came to give evidence for that day against Milosevic for a contravention of the Geneva Convention, which by the way I showed him the day afterwards and said that I've seen this happening, we've got the films of it, here's the Geneva Convention, these are the clauses which you have broken, and you could be tried in The Hague for this. So the next time I saw him was when I gave evidence in The Hague for that day's work, and I reminded him of our conversation. But what was the evidence of that was the film that David took. So shining the light, even though it may not be perfect, has a major role to play, it seems to me. My next point is the point about rule of law. Anto, look, I agree with you, but those people up in the tribal areas, the Pashtun areas of Afghanistan, they know what the law is. They know what justice is. It may not be our law, but they know what the law is. And here's my point, maybe contentious to you all. I remember when I went to Bosnia, I found a group of very well-meaning young Harvard law graduates and young men of 20 from British law firms drawing up a Bosnian legal code entirely on Anglo-Saxon basis. It had nothing to do with Bosnia's culture. It had nothing to do with the European law, which Bosnia's law was going to have to be a part of in due course, and I sent them all back home. And we got the Bosnians together to start writing their own legal codex.
That's my point.
Now, well, hang on. But then my point goes a bit further. If it is the case that the people in Afghanistan in which you are intervening want to have Sharia law, however offensive I find that, I don't think I am entitled to use lethal weapons, tanks and guns to stop them having it. If they want to have Sharia law as the mechanism by which they deliver justice, that's their business, not mine. Now you explain that to your people back home on the television cameras, on your television sets, that that's the kind of law. But the rule of law often means a rule of law that we would not find acceptable at home. But if that's their choice, we may not like it, but we're not entitled to kill people so they can't have it, it seems to me. And my last point, very simply, is that leads me on to corruption, and Lindsay's important point. I think the reason why corruption, and it's the thing you can expose, and the local press can expose, is so important, is because it is the soft underbelly of nationalism. I knew I couldn't take nationalism on head-to-head in Bosnia, but I could attack the nationalist structures by attacking the corrupt structures that supported them. If I did that, I'd have the public supporting it. And it was through that that we managed to get at the nationalist structures. I guess the same is true in Afghanistan and probably in Belfast as well. And that's why the corruption issue, shining the light in Jeremy's words, on the corruption issue is, I think, a vital part of assisting failing states not to fail.